Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd go through how I render emotes for Twitch, Discord, and YouTube Live. I've been making emotes for my own Twitch channel and for other people's Twitch channels, as well as my Etsy shop for about a year now. And I've come across a couple of things that really help them stand out and make a really good impression for your channel. I like to do a little bit more of a rubber hose animation style design for my emotes rather than more of an anime style. I know there's a ton of really cool artists already doing anime styled emotes out there and they're really beautiful. It just kind of didn't fit my vibe exactly, so I kind of went for more of a Cuphead, like 1930s animation style for mine. I feel like the rubber hose style animation has a little bit creepier of a feel, which is very on brand for me, as well as it has a lot of really good exaggerated expressions that read well as emotes. I tend to do my initial sketch in blue pencil and then come back with a red pencil and do more of a line pass, so I know exactly where I'm inking before I start. The blue is just sort of like a layout or setup. It lets me kind of figure out where within the emote square I'm putting things. I'm using a template here that will be available through a link in the description of this video. It's got a masking layer that you can kind of turn on and off. This lets me create a little bit outside of the emote area, and that way at the end of the emote, if I need to move things around a little bit within the square, I can do that. It also lets me zoom in and out a little bit more and just kind of gives me a little bit of extra wiggle room without having to go back and patch things, which is super nice. Hopefully that template is useful to you as well if you're making your own emotes for Twitch or for your Discord channel or for your YouTube live channel. You can see here I'm doing a little bit of a sneaky eyebrow trick just because I like to get the eyebrows at least like similar, especially for like a 3/4 view like this. I'll select the full size eyebrow and then just like copy it, reverse it, squish it down a little bit and get at least in the sketch, like an initial pass on the eyebrow that matches the first one I drew. I'd also recommend, if you're doing emotes, make the eyes really big and really overdo the expressions, because these are only going to be 112 pixels by 112 pixels at their biggest. You want to make sure that you're taking up as much space as possible within the emote and the expression is as readable as possible at a very small size. Here I'm doing the initial inking pass on the emote. This is a 12 pixel brush. I'm going to come back in a minute and do a round of details with an 8 pixel brush. I use a brush that's got a little bit of a taper at the end, but it's mostly kind of a monoline. It does have a little bit of line smoothing, stabilization, whatever your program calls it, on it. This brush is available for you to get through my Patreon, but any brush you're comfortable with will work for this. I like coming back to do a detail pass because it adds a little bit more line variance, especially with a brush like this that's kind of a monoline, without crowding the area too much and without adding too many large lines to kind of lose the details. You can see the lines I'm doing here are pretty clean. There's not a lot of hatching or extra little bits and bobs that I tend to add to my illustration work and my comic work. This is because these are so small, the hatching and any kind of extra little bits would really get lost. You wouldn't be able to see them hardly at all. So all of the accessories and details that I have included in here are very oversized. The hair clip and the earring are huge compared to her head, but it's not really gonna look like that when you shrink it down to 112 pixels. It's gonna look a little bit more natural. This is kind of why I also said oversize the eyes, is because everything's going to be so small by the time we get to it. Coming out of inking right here, you can see it's super simple. I don't always love these right when they come out of just the inks. I feel like it's just missing a lot of the subtlety and cool things that the sketch had. But by the end of the coloring process, I'm a lot happier with these usually. Here's the whole set as it's inked. I'm just kind of cleaning up my template area. All right, we're finally to the fun part, which is coloring. I'm using the select and fill tool that I showed you guys in my Clip Studio coloring video. It just makes things a lot faster. You do kind of have to come back and clean up a little bit, but it makes it really, really quick for me to just do my flat fills and to test a bunch of colors. You can see here, these are not the finals that we end up going with, but it's very quick to just kind of change these with that tool, and I can get a lot of iteration through different color schemes this way. For these emotes, I wanted a little bit more of like a punk goth chick. You can see that I'm adding a lot of gray here. When you can see the color scheme on the side has black in it. I'm doing gray because we're going to add shading and gradients on top of this. I'm also doing 2 different tones of gray so that we end up with like a little more variation. You can tell the different parts of the emote apart. We also need to keep in mind here that for most of these emotes, these are going to show up on dark mode for a lot of people, whether it's in Discord, YouTube, or Twitch. There's dark mode for all of those, and it tends to be what people use more. So we want to make sure that it looks good on dark mode and light mode. I'll show you guys at the end of the video a quick way to test these as you're working on them, and when they're done, to make sure that you are making the colors and the details really readable for all of these different places. All right, so we're adding some color variety here and a little bit of like the start of some lighting. I've added some dark circles around her eyes, and then also fixed her bottom lipstick was kind of missing because there's not a defining line that I could select with my select and fill tool there. Doing a little bit of eye makeup, and then we're going to get started adding some darker gradients and some big kind of airbrushy other colors to this to give it a little bit more definition. A trick I'm using to make sure her face is the focal point is I'm adding the most contrast around her eyes. So you can see we've got those dark blacks in her eye makeup, and we've got the really white of her eye whites as well as the light kind of gray tone of her skin. That will draw your eye the fastest, and then I've kind of faded everything off with the orange color that I'm shading with towards the edges so that you're drawn in towards the face. I'm keeping the lighting super simple here, just because it's so small. We're not really going to be able to read any kind of complicated lighting. There's obviously going to be a few exceptions to this, like rage emotes, anything that has like the eye area darkened is going to be a little bit more of a complicated lighting thing. You can definitely do those for emotes, and I think they look really nice. For a general emote though, like this kind of smirk, I would just tend towards a simpler lighting style. I'm doing a lot of hard and also soft blending with these shadows. You can kind of see her cheekbone goes from kind of a sharp cutoff into like a faded soft, just to emphasize the planes of the face a little bit better. I think this lighting part with the shadows is probably the most intensive and requires the most time for me, at least. I'm not super experienced with lighting in digital art and have spent the last year kind of working on that within my creative practice. We're going to continue here and just keep shading everything until it's all shaded to kind of the same detail level. I want to make sure that the hair and also all of the little things like the clip and the earring and her shirt collar all have the same level of detail to them. I'm adding a little bit of a dark gradient to the hair here to highlight the contrast around the face, and then also get that closer to the darker color that I was looking for with the hair and also the outfit. I'm also adding a little bit more detail to the eyes here, just a little bit lighter pink kind of at the bottom where the light would be hitting, and then also that hard shadow underneath the lid kind of adds a little bit more contrast there as well. At this point, I've started to recolor the line work. I've got a layer set right above the line art that I've clipped to the line art layer, so I'm only adding color in the areas where there's line art. I probably could have pushed this a little harder on the skin tones, could have gone a little lighter with those recolors. I find that recoloring the line art really softens the areas where there would be kind of harsh lines, and it can also clarify some of the details, like the green earring is going to read as like a green plastic or something because the line art for that area is green. I've also kind of added a little Peter Pan collar for her because I was kind of going for that like Adams vibes a little bit. She did turn out kind of a little more like neon punk than I was going for, but I still think she looks really cute. We're adding highlights here. I use bright white for my emotes just to kind of keep that theme of contrast. I've added way too many here, so you can see later I kind of go back and erase a few of those. Just trying to hit the areas where the light would be hitting her hair, her eyes, the lips, we want kind of like a little bit of shine there, and then any metal pieces like her earrings, and then the top of the shirt collar. This is one of the other tricks that I have for emotes. I'm doing a 25 pixel big black solid outline around the whole thing on a new layer underneath the colors. And that helps it kind of stand off from light mode backgrounds and helps it kind of blend into the dark mode backgrounds. It just tends to look a little bit more polished with this, and it kind of emphasizes that outside layer. You can see I wasn't super careful at the top and the bottom that those outlines were consistent, because those are most likely going to get cut off by the masking. I'm using my big opacity blender brush here from my brush set. This is my go-to blending and kind of all-purpose brush for digital painting. Here I'm adding that same green color, but on an add layer above the shadows. And I'm kind of just going back and adding a little bit of edge highlighting as a final touch. This tip really helps these kind of pop when you see them. It also makes them look a little bit more detailed. This helps a lot with the dark mode. So you'll get kind of, the dark mode will blend into that black outline that's around the outside, and then you'll lose a little bit of that line art, but you'll kind of pick up that bright green on the edge of her hair. This works really well with kind of like saturated colors. It works well with pastels. It works kind of, you can kind of add any kind of color you want to your emotes that matches the color scheme. With these, again, I tend to overdo it and then have to kind of go back and erase things like under the eyebrows here and over the eyebrows. It's just a little too much, so I kind of got rid of those. I really like an add layer for this rather than like a screen or a normal layer, because it reacts differently to each of the colors that it kind of goes over. So where her hair changes color, you can kind of see it changes the tone a little bit of the green. And now we've got a finished emote. Obviously, you're going to make sure and save at this point. I don't ever really do any changes or flattening on my final drawing files. I tend to keep these with all the separate layers just in case I ever need to come back and recolor them or make changes, if they're commissions especially. You can see here I'm using that masking, and I'm using the tiles in the masking to do a quick select, copying it out to another file, turning off all of the background so that it exports as transparent. And then I'm exporting a full version of it for use as like a profile picture or little sprinkles on your stream or whatever. And then a 112 pixel square, a 56 pixel square, and a 28 pixel square. This is just me changing those sizes and then exporting each one. Now we're going to go ahead and test these and make sure that they look nice for your streaming software. The site that I'm using to test these is linked in the description below. You basically just upload your finished 112 pixel option and then hit preview, and it will show you what it looks like on dark or light mode on Twitch and dark or light mode on Discord. I hope these tricks get you well on your way to making your own emotes. Please let me know if you have any questions or suggestions for future tutorials in the comments below. Or you can drop by my stream here on YouTube. I'm always happy to answer questions. This video is brought to you by my patrons, Tara Billie Jean, Anthony Jutz, and Jesse C. Thank you so much for your support. You are the best of humans. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.